Hello, today's video is all about closing, and I thought I would mention a story where I was interviewing for a job, and a guy I knew was actually, I was competing with him. I felt really confident about the interview because I had a lot more experience. I'm older. This person was not that far removed from college. In the interview, I was very gracious, very good manners, and all of those types of things. Just saying that I thought I would do well. Here's the experience that I have that'll illustrate how well I'll do, and I appreciate the opportunity. So nothing crazy. Actually, just went with the flow. Good conversation, and I thought it would go well. Did not get the job, and the reason was because I was never direct in asking for it, and the other person was. And so if you have a sales type of position that you're interviewing for, especially, and the person interviewing you feels like you have are not able to be direct, then they're probably not going to hire you because that's what they need from their salespeople is to be direct with the people that they are talking to. So today is about closing, especially for people that are not natural closers. There are people that exist, and you probably know some people like that have no problems saying inappropriate stuff and it just rolls off the tongue and they have no qualms about it. They're not embarrassed. And then there's other folks like perhaps myself where closing is not easy because it's not something that comes naturally to me. Again, not being super outgoing, but still important. And it's an important skill to acquire. So today we're going to talk about some ways to close if you're not naturally a great closer. Today's presentation is going to focus on three things when it comes to closing. We are going to look at the pre-close. Secondly, concept called tie downs. And then finally, we're going to talk about learning to be direct and really talking about the benefits of that. So the pre-close, tie downs, and the benefits of being direct. So first, let's start with the pre-close. The idea with the pre-close is that you're going to set up your close in the beginning, just like it sounds, but the real purpose is so that your close at the end isn't so dramatic. I think that's what a lot of people fear that aren't great closers is like, my gosh, I don't want to destroy a good conversation by abruptly stopping and asking something that's incredibly demanding at the end, right? So this gives it a little bit better flow. Pre-closing can have its place in interviews, but I think it still lends itself better to someone that is incredibly direct and comfortable with being direct. If that's not your personality or you haven't developed that yet, I would say it's a development skill that you can acquire. But if you're not there yet, I wouldn't sweat it. It might be something like, if I can show you that I can do X, Y, and Z as listed in the requirements for this position, would you be willing to offer me the job today? Right? That would be an example of a pre-close, but you can see that's pretty aggressive. At least I would feel like that's an aggressive stance. If I were interviewing somebody and they said that to me, I would be really impressed with their brashness, but I don't know how that I would answer that because it would be something like, well, let's just see how the interview goes, and if you can prove those things, then we're going to have to talk, right? So it's not something where you're likely to get exactly what you're asking for anyway. However, pre-closes work incredibly well in presentations. One that I used to use quite a bit and still do is if I'm giving a presentation on an investment that I'm presenting, then I want to identify a client that would benefit from that investment. So for example, what I might say is something like, we just finished tax season, and I want you to think about the three clients that drove you crazy this tax season. They have the most complicated taxes, they lean on you the most, they complain the most, and I'll give you a second to write those names down. And do give them a second, give them some time. Just stand up there if it's awkward. That's just something you'll have to sit into, but you don't have to give them a ton of time. Just give them a minute to think about it. So you can see what that does, right? What that prompts for later. So when you close later, you don't have to just out of the blue say, now I'm going to follow up with you on Monday, and I'd like you to take that time to think about some people that fit exactly what I described in today's presentation, right? Instead, because you set up the pre-close, you can say, now you wrote down three names that gave you a tremendous headache during tax season this year. I'm going to call you on Monday. Let's talk about those three clients and make sure that next year's taxes are much easier on you and on them. right? So you see how it's a little bit easier to have that type of transition, and it might be easier for you to close if you're not naturally aggressive simply by using a pre-close in the beginning. So let's talk about tie downs. Tie downs are another form of pre-close. You are setting up the close for later by doing something in the beginning, and they take basically two parts. So part one is going to be the things that you want to highlight about yourself or your company or whatever you're selling that are unique and set you apart. And then you incorporate them into the tie down so that you can close with them later. So for me, it might be something, if I'm interviewing, for example, I might say public speaking, organization, and consistency. That's the message I want to leave them with when they think about me later, when they're trying to figure out who to hire for this position. I want those to be the things that come to mind for them. And I'm also going to use them to close. So one of the classic tie downs is the phrase, "Wouldn't you agree?" I'm not a huge fan of it. I'll talk about that later to find something that fits your personality, but it's a really good example. So let's say I want to talk about my public speaking. I might say something to the effect of, "Wouldn't you agree that it would be really great to have someone in this position that's comfortable in front of an audience?" That would allow you to not only promote what we're doing internally to your most important stakeholders, but also give you the ability to put someone in front of a crowd and sell outside of our organization. Right? So it's a really great question because you're going to get a positive yes type of answer that lends to a specific skill set that you're trying to get across to them. And as you can tell, you can use it for later. You had told me earlier that having someone that was a really polished public speaker would be beneficial to this role. For that reason, I would like you to consider me, right? And the whole basis of this is very psychological. For a lot of people, when they're in an interview and they're in a sales environment, they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear. But if you're hearing that, think about the people that try to sell to you, telemarketers, and you're hearing something from them, and you're saying, "Well, I don't know if I agree with what you're saying. I don't know if my life would be improved by adding this cable service," or whatever it is, right? But if I'm telling you that, yes, that would be better, then suddenly it's true. Right? If the salesperson says it's true, maybe it's not. If the person being sold to says it's true, it's definitely true. So that is really the psychology behind a tie down. One I like to use that fit my personality a little bit better is, would it be helpful? I use this especially if I was going to be of service. Wouldn't it be helpful if I followed up with you at least once a week to let you know how the processing was going? And even if we haven't achieved anything yet, I'm going to give you an update and just let you know where we are. Right? A very simple tie down. Again, great service is really one of the keys to great sales, in my opinion. So if you can use something like that, most people will say, "Yeah, that would be wonderful. I would love to have somebody call me and let me know what's going on, or email me and let me know what's going on. That would be fantastic," right? And so later on, you said having that consistency was something that you were looking for this type of sale, right? So again, you're using something to ask a question to highlight what you're really good at, because you're going to stick it in your pocket for later and use it in your close. Finally, we're going to wrap up by talking about the benefits of closing and being direct. So this is the hardest part, actually following through with the close. But one of the reasons that you want to close is because it gives you your arguments, right? It gives you the reasons why somebody doesn't want to buy. And that may sound counterintuitive, but that's incredibly valuable information. If somebody pushes back, if somebody tells you they don't want to buy, it's so easy to ask them, "Well, why not?" And if you don't have that information, then a lot of times it's really difficult to figure out if you do fit what they're looking for, and if you can overcome that. I know historically, living in the South, a lot of people really hate to sell to Southerners because they'll just agree with everything you say, whether they like it or not, and then they just won't buy from you later on, and you don't know exactly what the problem was. In this situation, I would definitely agree. Some parts of the country are easier to work with because they'll say, "Adam, I don't like this because of this." So you can direct that. You can actually go after that, and you can directly go after that objection and see if there's a way you can still work together. But you're never going to find that out unless you're direct. So closing is so important for that reason, where you can say, okay, if you're in an interview, for example, I might have my pre-closes set up where I'm probably going to use tie downs. We talked about how you do look for somebody with public speaking experience. You do look for somebody that's organized, and you like that consistency that I bring to the table. I am super excited about the opportunity to work together. When can I expect to hear from you? Right. And that's probably as aggressive as I feel comfortable getting in an interview. But I think that's pretty good. I mean, and there are people that will do that way better than me. But people I'm really talking to with this video are those that would like never close, would never try to say anything remotely like that because they're worried about derailing a good conversation. But if you set it up properly, then that comes across okay, and the people that are interviewing will appreciate it. And what they may say, might be something like, Adam, I don't know if we're going to follow up. We're looking for somebody with a little bit more experience with this. Now, if you had just said, well, hey, I really appreciate the time, it was great talking to you, you would never have uncovered that information of what kind of experience they're looking for that you may lack. And you've got this last effort and last chance to address it. That's going to be true with anything, especially in sales. If you are okay, well, you said you like this, you like this, you like this. Let's go ahead and start with the paperwork, or let's go ahead and start with this, whatever it takes to get that process rolling. If they're like, no, let's hold on just a second. I'm not real comfortable with this, so there's going to be elements that you're just not aware of. There are things going on in their lives or whatever that you may not know. And unless you close, unless you ask directly, you're never going to uncover those things. So that's the benefit of being direct, and that's the benefit of closing. If you do it right, it's not that difficult. And then the other thing is, as you do it more and more, you'll get more comfortable being direct and not needing some of the crutches, which I use crutch in a positive term, of having pre-closes as well as your tie-down questions. So that's it. That's our video on closing. Just a few techniques for someone that is not a natural closer. I know some people would probably see this and be like, oh my gosh, this is not closing at all. And I would love to hear your thoughts. If you think that it's something that's helpful, great. If you've tried to close and it's been beneficial, would love you to share that information. Or if you've tried to close with something that has just crashed, I may make some comments myself. I've certainly tried some things that have not gone well. But closing is difficult, especially in the heat of the moment. And hopefully a few of these tactics can make it a little bit easier on you, and certainly make the conversation flow a little bit better, and make this something that you can do on your own.